Please all come forward, those of you who are making presentations so that we save time. And I request Agre to be very, very active in loading these presentations. So have you loaded the one for Emily? So Emily, come forward and take over the seat. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to the scientific committee and the organizers for giving us the opportunity to present our work. So, Kibale Forest Schools Program, or the Kasisi Project, I'm going to interchange the two, works with communities outside Kibale National Park. We all know and are proud of Kibale National Park to be the primate capital of the world, with the largest chimpanzee population in the country. However, the Kibale area, or the communities around the Kibale National Park, reflect the national population trends, with half of the population having people under the age of 17. One of the conservation challenges in that area is poverty and lack of education. As of the 2024 census, 25% of rural Uganda lives below the poverty line, with 77% of the rural children not attending secondary school. Now, for Kibale's case, that means all those people are remaining within the communities and eventually ending up on depending on the forest. Kibale National Park also has its history, you know, as being a hunting grounds for the local kings, and it was just declared a national park recently in the 90s. So because of this history, people are still tempted to view the park as a free resource. So there's a tendency to go into the park for things from firewood to medicinal plants. And all these pose conservation challenges to the forest. Because of this, at least 30% of the Kibale chimpanzees, so this is the have suffered a snare injury or been snared before. So Kibale Chimpanzee Project provides multiple layers of and wildlife protection inside the park. There is evidence that there are fewer snares in the research zone. And of course, together with Uganda Wildlife Authority, we also do snare removal and now have vets on the ground for wildlife health intervention and monitoring programs. So UWA's anti-patrol or anti-poaching patrols work. We see the decline in the number of snares removed over the years, with 2012, for example, 2012 being in black across. So whether it's snares or any other illegal activities, they are declining over the years. But they continue to be there. And now we are entering this age where we insist that conservation should involve the local communities. You've had so many people talking about community involvement and must be spearheaded by local communities. I am now interested, after the work we are doing, to find out from Uganda Wildlife Authority how many of their local staff are actually locals from near the parks that they are working in, and at what levels. Are the local staff members rangers or senior wardens? That would be an interesting study to look at. So the Kasisi project was established 29 years ago. and it's the community outreach arm of Kibale Chimpanzee Project. We partner with 16 government-aided primary schools on the edge of Kibale National Park and near the community of chimpanzees, known as the Kanyawara chimpanzee community. We do so many things, from education, improvement, teaching support, and all that, health education, but we are ultimately a conservation education program. So we work with wildlife clubs after school. You're all aware that there's no conservation education taught or in the education curriculum in Uganda. So our work is always after school. And we conduct field trips to expose these children to the different wildlife areas and also commemorate wildlife days. And recently we introduced the conservation career days. The after-school wildlife clubs are weekly per school with themed curriculum. This year our theme is restoration. And so we go and talk to the children about it and also have hands-on conservation activities with the children.
Field trips, we take them to national parks, both the students and the teachers, based on the themed curriculum of the year.
And the commemoration of wildlife days may involve, for example, the World Chimpanzee Day. We take people to talk to the students and celebrate those days. In this case, we have a vet talking to the students about chimps. We do snare games, and we also commemorate other wildlife days. So for the conservation careers, the aim is to strengthen student interest in careers in conservation and improve access to Ugandan conservation role models. Most children, when asked, they say they want to be engineers or doctors, the ones they've grown up looking at, and they're not aware that they can actually participate in the field of conservation. So we go, it's in an assembly format, and the conservationist in question talks to them about their career journey. All of us did not go to Kitante Primary School or Green Hill. We all started from those rural schools. And then they will do an activity with the children, and the children are allowed to ask questions, and they answer them. So we've hosted several conservationists. This is our Chief Park Warden, the environmental officer from the Kabarole. This is the climate action person, Dr. Peter Appel, talking about being a wildlife vet, and a researcher, and the students are allowed to ask questions. So before we started this model, most of the children, so every time we have a conservation intervention, we do pre-evaluations and then conduct our activity, and then at the end of the year, we do a post-evaluation. And before we did this, 22% of the students said they wanted a career in conservation, and afterwards it was 45%, which for us was very impressive. Of course, some of them are still dead keen on being whatever engineer or doctor that they want to be. So our model exposed the children to new careers, especially in conservation, and motivated them to pursue the careers in conservation. We are grateful to our collaborators, and especially Uganda Wildlife Authority, for always being there to do this work with us. I thank you very much.
Our next presenter is Isaac Tuinomuhangi, and he is going to talk about the influence of non-state actors on local livelihoods and perceptions towards Bwindi Mugahinga Conservation Area Management. Isaac, you're welcome. You have 10 minutes, strictly.
Good afternoon, members. I thank UA and the Institute for Research for inviting us to present our data and our research in this time. So we know to achieve conservation effectively, we need a hand for non-state actors. And I'm sure most of the participants within this symposium belongs to that sector of non-state actors. So I'm called Isaac Twinomhanj from Institute of Tropical Forest Conservation. So the background of the study, BMCT was established in 1994 after the gazettement of the two protected national parks around 1991. And it with the support from the Global Environment Facility. The main objective of this organization, which is the case study that I have used, was to promote conservation. And we all know, minus the community, we cannot achieve this goal of conserving the parks. And they also wanted to fund the community projects, both livelihood projects and common good projects. And for the livelihood projects, as well projects that brings income to the households, and then the common good projects are those projects that benefits the whole public. For example, like the road, like the schools, like community water tanks, and etc. And it also wanted to promote sustainable conservation financing. For example, most of the people have talked about human-wildlife conflicts. So this organization was trying to also put some finances such that this conservation can take place. And BMCT ICDP's impacts on local livelihood and conservation remains unclear, and it has been in place for over 30 years. So why this study? One, we needed to evaluate conservation effectiveness. We needed to inform the conservation policy decisions. Then we strengthen the community participation and support sustainable development. The main objective was to assess the influence of livelihoods and still examine the community attitudes towards conservation, methodology and methods. We focused on BMCT area of operation, the first and the second parishes close to the park. And the study included 1,742 from 32 parishes randomly selected out of 56 parishes, which is within the operational area. 852 were the beneficiaries, BMCT beneficiaries, and 890 were the non-BMCT beneficiaries. We used household surveys to extract data from the community, and descriptive statistics was used. And these are the photos showing how we have been interviewing the local people. To the results. Of course, we cannot assess or examine the impact minus knowing whether the communities know why these parks was created. So according to the study, majority of the respondents across the two protected areas knew about the reasons why the park was created, and still we moved forward to know, do they know what are the benefits they are getting from the park? And environmental benefits was highly mentioned, and this includes rain, fresh air, and other environmental benefits. So still, the park tourism-related activities benefits was also included as the main benefits they're getting from the park. And people around Mugahinga also, though the number was few, but they are appreciating the park as it reduces soil erosion, as we see on the graph. So, we tried to first find out whether in the communities we still have illegal resource extractions. And interestingly now the number have reduced within the 2 protected areas, and the overall percentage of both the beneficiaries and those who are non-BMCT beneficiaries responded that community members no longer go to the park with that percentage. And about 38% of the respondents of the community members still got poached within the park. And we tried to find out what are the resources collected from the park. And both the beneficial and the non-beneficiaries revealed bushmeat as attributed that the communities are poor, they don't have much income to buy meat from the local markets, and also to pay school fees and other basic needs for their children. So they ended up going to the park such that they can earn an income and still meat for protein. And also fuel wood was also included, craft materials. As we know, we are within the tourism sector, and there are weaving materials and the carving materials, and these materials are not locally available within the community. And others, for example, around Mugahinga, still there is a problem of water, and I think it is the only park that where people still goes to the park around Kigezi, where people still goes to the park to get water. And still in the others, we see the grass, the pasture, and others. So, of the 38% of the people who don't go to the park, of those people who don't go to the park, we tried to find out why are they not extracting resources from the park. And this thanks goes to Uganda Wildlife Authority, as most of the community members fear the OR rangers and stops them from going to the park. And there was sensitization and awareness within the park, and also some park-related benefits at the graph. And the current motivations, as poverty was mentioned high, then culture and tradition briefs, resentment as people are always affected by crop breeding, others have been chased away and they lost their land, so they say, let me go to the park and get resources. Moreover, the park or the wild animals are destroying my crops. So we go to the impact of BMCT ICDPs to the household level. We used the 3 levels, no change, some stroke retro, and a lot of benefit. Of course, to get an impact, someone must be benefiting from something. So most of the beneficiaries revealed that they have a lot of benefit, and this attributed them to an increase on their households to have money for paying school fees, have food for their families. Then on the no change, it was attributed to the deaths of some of like livestock, like giving them few projects, which led them not to get a benefit or an impact toward their household. And these These photos were for the projects. Then on the attitude towards conservation, of course, the overall of the project, both beneficiaries, the number is high, they are positive toward the park, and on the other side of the BMCT non-beneficiaries, the positives were also as attributed to the environmental benefits, and still the benefits from other non-state actors other than conservation, other than BMCT. Then these are the other known non-state actors working around there. And it is IGCP, RTV, Gorilla Organization, Mbaka, blah, 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 and as you see on the presentation. Then the conclusion and recommendations, non-state actors, of course, improve livelihoods and support positive conservation attitudes. Then the recommendations, we recommend to expand and equitable access to livelihoods, projects and income opportunities, and they prioritize the most affected communities around the park. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a very interesting presentation. Management of Uganda Wildlife Authority. I'm sure the chief warden is here, and people are still saying they go to the park, and you see the percentages of responses are quite high, and the reasons why they go. But Bwindi happens to be one of the parks where the community benefit implementation is very strong, but these things still happen. And so that is the reason why this scientific symposium happens to be very important. I thank the presenter very much. And so I want to call upon Bruce Aine Biona to come and talk about motivations and barriers influencing adoption of environmentally sustainable practices, this time not Bwindi, but around Kibale National Park. Bruce, you're welcome. 10 minutes, strict.
Yeah, thank you, session chair. Thank you everyone for holding on. Yeah, like the chair said, it's a tricky time, but we'll see how to pull through. I'm here to present this on behalf of my co-authors. This is a publication that is up there. I'm happy that we have the booklets. It's on page 60 for more details. I work with Unite for the Environment, and we do work with communities around Kibale National Park. Our program is mainly supported by the North Carolina Zoo. So at Unite, that's the map of Kibale. We work on the Kamwenge side up the borders of Chenjojo, and our colleagues, Emily Otali and the rest, work on the Kabalole side. And so our program is majorly community conservation through schools at the entry point. And currently we work with 15 schools, the green dots you're seeing, and our center is mainly Bigodi, which has been recently acknowledged for community conservation efforts. Kibale, we all know about it. It is very, very rich in terms of biodiversity, but also it stands out because of the 13 primate species, including the endangered chimpanzee. Unfortunately, like the NEMA person said in the morning, population is increasing day by day. So that means there's more pressure exerted on the natural resources, most especially outside, but also it could actually cross over and spill over into the park. So with that, we have quite a number of issues in communities around there because of that population increase. So at Unite, what we do is try to promote sustainable practices such that these people can coexist and survive with nature. Like I mentioned, our model is majorly teacher-focused. So we have 15 schools now. By the time we came up with this, we had 12, but now we have 15 schools. So we train teachers, and then the teachers reach out to the children, And then the children go and implement projects in their homes, which they can manage. But also we encourage teachers to be role models in their communities. So that's how the multiplier effect is sort of like aimed at. But also we reinforce the teachers' efforts with directly working with community groups which are organized. So we have over the years promoted different sustainable practices, and specifically for this presentation I will focus on some of the projects we implemented in the recent past. So as we promote these sustainable practices, and other partners also do the same, the uptake is always not uniform. You find a practice is so much taken up, adopted, and then another practice is not actually adopted. You find people adopting more than the others. And so we needed to find out what drives this kind of uptake. So in summary, that's what we needed to understand. And then, so it is to see those motivations. What motivates someone to say, do this activity and implement it? Or what blocks them from implementing these activities? So that's the main study objective. So the methods we used, we work with the schools. So we have school registers. We went into the registers and then sampled randomly 254 households from the school register. So if Bruce is from Bigodi, his father is Joseph, and they are in village C, would go to that specific homestead and then see what their parents say or whoever we found there said. And we used structured questionnaires between 2020 and 2021. And specifically, we focused on fuel-efficient stoves, waste management, and then sustainable agriculture. From the results, I will start with the fuel-efficient stoves. We found that we promoted this, and those who were actually using them and like using the stoves were motivated because they knew and they believed they reduce cooking time, but also they take less fuel wood. That was one of the biggest motivation for the adoption of fuel-efficient stoves. But also interestingly, there's quite a percentage that were motivated by reduced environmental impact. And then a few other factors, other family members encouraged by the community, and so that tells you the impact of the multiplier effect. If a community member can encourage the other, then are you able to go on and on. With the barriers, there are quite a number of barriers that they mentioned, and they were so spread that most of the barriers were all put together in the other section. But the need for repair, the technicalities used needed for use of this stove were some of the key barriers in adopting the stoves. And then agroforestry, it was also adopted mainly because it can give people food, especially for the fruit trees. Then it can improve soil fertility, and then people get more yields, and probably income also relates to that. And so those are the main motivations. And for the barriers, it was land, lack of knowledge, and then no trees to plant. Then we did also this. In our program of sustainable agriculture, we're promoting more of organic practices, but people kept on using agrochemicals. So we wanted to find out why people kept on using agrochemicals, but they were easy to apply and they save time, as opposed to our promoted activities, which are labor intensive and also time consuming. So in summary, we concluded that the primary motivators were majorly economic and practical. So in the house, as we promote conservation activities, as we promote sustainable activities, our people in the communities, if something is not practical, if it's not economical, if it does not improve their household well-being, if it is high cost, if it doesn't bring benefits which are direct, or time efficient, then adoption becomes very tricky. So the ecological motivations, in most cases, were very secondary. And the main barriers, lack of knowledge and awareness, which gives us a reason to go ahead and create more awareness. And then the intensity of labor, limited resources. This is more or less the same. So going forward, we need to focus more on this, increase community-based education, strengthen practical demonstrations of benefits. When you're promoting a sustainable activity, let's see how it resonates with the common person on the ground. The direct benefits is what they see first before they see the conservation and the ecological benefits. Then we need to align conservation with livelihood needs. Yes, we cannot give handouts, but once in a while, we need to come in and see the needs of the people and give a hand where we can. And then focus on win-win. We cannot be for them against us, but we need to find that balance. Because sometimes you are accused that you're the agents of war, you're coming here because of the animals, for us you don't mind about us. So in our operations as conservation education entities, we need to find that balance. Can we fight for the animals and for the biodiversity, but also our people feel that we are also on their side? I want to thank you so much. We do work hand in hand with other institutions. UA has been key. Dorothy was part of the team, the Community Conservation Department by then, before she transferred. Wildlife Clubs of Uganda, we did a lot of work in the schools. And then CAFRED is one of our key partners. And then Cleveland Metro Park Zoo supports North Carolina Zoo for our work. I thank you so much, and all the best.
Thank you, Bruce, for keeping time. In the interest of time management, we are going to continue with the presentations until they are done, and then we can do the Q&A. Okay? So at this juncture, I wish to call upon Hindra to come forward and talk about exploring the causes and extent of human-wildlife conflict in Queen Elizabeth Park for sustainable coexistence strategies. Hindra, you're most welcome. 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. As conservationists, we know sometimes we get to read such titles in newspapers where you read about lions being poisoned and snares and all that. And we all know we still have an issue of human-wildlife conflict. So this study was conducted by Uganda Wildlife Research and Training College. And we intended to explore the causes and extent of human-wildlife conflict in Queen Elizabeth, such that we can come up with coexistence strategies. Yes. I speak loud, okay, thank you. Anyway, those are some of the news that we get to see once in a while. And of course, as conservationists, they are close to our hearts and they cut deep. So some of the objectives for this study, we wanted to, first of all, identify the factors that contribute to HWC. And then we wanted to study the extent and severity of these incidents, because it might be there, but when it is not at a big extent or when it is not severe. And then we wanted to also study what contributes to the trends of HWC in our study area. So we used, our study area was communities neighboring with Queen Elizabeth National Park. And we used 3 sub-counties, and in each sub-county we picked 2 to 3 parishes. In Lake Katwe sub-county, we picked Busunga and Hamkungu, and we wanted to make sure that all communities here are represented, because some are pastoralists and some they are into crop farming. We also used Mobukutu, Kabaka, and Skim, and these are in Kasese. And then we also used Moruti and Nyamugasani parishes. Okay, so one of our methodologies, we used focus group discussions. The picture at the extreme end was taken from Nyakatonzi, and then we also did surveys, household surveys, and we also did informant interviews. We used questionnaires, a focus group discussion guide, and also we developed a tool for us to determine the conflict severity index. The data that was collected, we analyzed it. The quantitative data, we first entered it into Excel sheet, then we did descriptive statistics, we did cross-tabulation, and then we also determined the CSI, that is conflict severity index. And then for qualitative, we transcribed the FDGs and also the recordings and the KII notes. We did coding and organized the data into thematic areas, and then later we moved on to put together our data. So some of the drivers of HWC were categorized into 3. Some were ecological, some were institutional, and some were socio-economical. The ecological ones, of course, was habitat. One of them was habitat encroachment. We also had competition for scarce resources. We had crop raiding, where animals are coming into people's gardens and destroying their crops. We had predation on livestock, especially lions, that tend to attack people's livestock, like in the areas of Nyakatonzi. And then we also had proximity to the park, which is inevitable because people are neighbors to the park. Then some of the institutional ones, the top one was ineffective compensation. People are not yet comfortable with compensation because sometimes it takes longer to come, and sometimes it is not the true representation of what they lost. For example, you lose a parent and you receive 1 million. They felt it is not fair. Then sometimes poor communication between communities and UA. For example, they have put in their submission for compensation, but they don't know how far that compensation has gone and when it will come. And then inequitable policy implementation. There are some who feel that they are indigenous and they own the land. For example, the Basongola people, they will tell you this is our land, and they feel it is now UA that came in and made their land into a national park, and they feel it doesn't sit well with them, and also limited resources and capacity. So some of the socioeconomic drivers, of course, we have population pressure, and then we also have communities over-depending on natural resources. For example, people with cows, they tend to go into the park, especially when it is a dry season. And then we have communities that go into the park to harvest some grass due to their cultural beliefs, like aromas for their milk and whatever. So they over-depend on the park. And then inadequate mitigation measures, or sometimes the measures are too strict. And then communities feel like they are not fully engaged into participating, and then retaliatory responses. This is why you see communities poisoning lions and the rest. So we have a simple graph to show the drivers of HWC in each of the parishes. We have Nyakatonzi, Hamukungu, Kabaka, Busunga, Mubuku, and Skim. And that was the distribution of the drivers per parish. And of course, the different colors, we have grazing, diseases, population pressure, and agriculture expansion. We did some statistics, and we wanted to see the significant difference. Of course, you can see that livestock grazing, which is an economic loss, was influencing human-wildlife conflict. People lose cows or lose whichever livestock, and now they want to retaliate by poisoning. Then we also, or sometimes they haven't poisoned per se, but their perceptions, they show you that that's where they are headed. Then we also had the extent and severity of human-wildlife conflict. So for this one, we had parameters that we used. For example, we would first see how far your home is from the park boundary, and we categorized it from 3 kilometers, 1 kilometer, 1 to 2 kilometers, and 2 to 3. And so that we are able to know, because someone who is closer to the park tends to suffer more than the person who is far. And then we also had another parameter, which was economic loss. You could be staying near the park, but when you don't own anything. And someone would be staying a bit far from the park, but when they have a garden, of course that garden will attract an elephant or whichever animals are attracted to their crops. So we also try to study the extent of the severity or extent of the conflict, depending on the economic loss, and we ran some statistics as well. And then we also looked at the type of damage caused by wildlife, if it is crop raiding, if it is livestock, loss of livestock. Sometimes animals destroy trees, and sometimes they destroy property. So we also try to associate the frequency of human-wildlife conflict occurrence across all the sub-counties, and those were our findings. Because sometimes a conflict might happen once, but when it is detrimental, but sometimes it might be happening more often, but on small scales. We also wanted to know that, so that we are able to know the extent and severity. Yes. If anyone is interested in the data, I guess they can come to me. So some of the attributes to the trends of human wildlife, we looked at some places at the moment did not have an electric fence, boundary protection, increased production, and the electric fence as well. So of course, when you're in the study, sometimes you get to also get information that you are not intended to get at first. But they also have their own ways of protecting themselves from conflict. For example, they have trained dogs. Someone from Mburo said the same thing. They have improvised with buying themselves torches to scare away animals, and they have kraals. Some are personal and some are communal kraals. So in conclusion, we realized the conflict in Queen is quite severe in some areas, not all areas, and it is multidimensional. It is not a one shoe fits all. What is happening in Nyakatonzi might not necessarily be the same happening in Hamkungu. So we also concluded that vulnerability is highest to the communities that are near the park and the ones that have farms of some sort. And then also some of the governance mechanisms, they seem not to be working. Maybe there is a gap. And also communities are willing to coexist, but only if some things are addressed. We recommend that the compensation should be strengthened. We recommend that they increase and decentralize revenue sharing, because this whole process of trying to get compensation and you go to Kampala and people wait for long, if you shorten that time, it might cause a small change. Also to scale up predator-proof kraals and solar fencing, invest in water and pasture infrastructure. People shouldn't go into the park to look for water, or you can even teach them on how to grow this pasture that is in the park on their home scale. To promote alternative livelihoods. If the lion has eaten your goats 10 times, please try to find another way of survival, because you're simply repeating the same thing. Then incorporate traditional knowledge into conservation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sandra. Hindra. She introduced herself. She is one of the research officers from Uganda Wildlife Training and Research College, Katwe. And you remember that institute, which became the college, was transferred the mandate to do research. And we are very, very, very happy that these people are performing the function. So I believe they are working really hard. And this is science, which you are seeing here. Me, I'm very, very glad about it. And I trust everyone here is glad about it too. And so we have 2 more presentations to go before the Q&A. I want to invite Immaculate Kembabazi. You realize that Lake Mburo has done extremely well during this symposium time. I hope the other parks follow suit. Okay. Immaculate, I'm told you have already made this presentation. Yes or no? Okay. So now we save time there a bit. Now we call Ben Belden Mugula for population structure, regeneration dynamics, and conservation priorities for Osiris lanceolata in Uganda's Karamoja drylands. Whatever that is, he is going to tell us. You are welcome. You have only 10 minutes. Thank you. Your time is already running. The IT is consuming time. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Chair. That is my name. I'm coming from Bugema University, and I'm here representing a group of researchers on the topic that is displayed on the screen. We had interest in this species. Commonly, it is called African sandalwood. That's the common name. This is a very important species. Globally, economically, it has a lot of economic impact. And when the populations decreased in Australia and India, the pressure shifted to African sandalwood. And we are privileged in Uganda that in Karamoja, we find this species growing there. So our interest was to understand what is happening to the population of this species, how is it regenerating, and of course, after having that information, we need to be able to inform our decision makers on how we can manage this species. So as I mentioned, it is an oil producing species, very expensive oil can be obtained from this species, but there are concerns of its population getting down and down and down. And of course, we did not have enough information about this species in Uganda, and so we had interest to go and find empirical evidence on the population of this species and how we can help decision makers to manage this species. So that was our objective, as I mentioned, to assess the structure of the population of this species, the dynamics in the regeneration of the species, and the drivers that are influencing the population structure of this species, and also make some recommendations for consideration. Now, that is where we did the study. Karamoja is composed of so many districts, but our study was located in the southern part of Karamoja, mainly confined to Moroto, Nakapiripirit, and Amdat. That is where we based our study. We did not have a chance to go to the northern part of Karamoja, that is Kotido, because of some conditions and the insecurity at that time. So what did we do? We used field surveys, ecological field surveys, and of course it is a rare species, and so you cannot just go on sampling anywhere, but we had to do it purposefully, using knowledge from the local people, where could this species be, and we did some kind of mapping of potential sites where we can have this kind of nature study for this species. of course, when you're assessing population structure, you need to understand the life stages of the species. So we did that assessment, and we are also interested in understanding why this species is here and it is not there. So we ended up also assessing soil nutrients that influencing the abundance of these species. And we did some regression models to see associations between these variables and the availability of the species. Now, the key findings. The major finding that we saw was that the population structure is very weak. There was evidence that the species is not naturally regenerating. As you can see, the numbers, 50% were adults, 46% saplings, and only 4% were seedlings. But this species is interesting in a way that when you cut it, it can sprout. So the standing individuals that we saw, most of them were growing as coppices, sprouts, not regenerating naturally. So you can see it is a small species. It's not a big species with a big stem diameter. So we can see, of course, the kind of individuals that are most found in this place were those growing young ones, sprouts, not those mature individuals growing independently, meaning that there was some kind of destruction and then the young ones are coming. So we were able to also have this kind of observation. And number two, regeneration, as I already mentioned, natural regeneration is poor. And majority of the individuals are just sprouts. And so the individuals there are dominated by copist individuals, sprouts, which also threatens the long-term genetic diversity of that species. We never know, because the quality of oil from this species may also be determined by the genetic composition of the species. So if you only have individuals that are just copists and then they are cut, then the others come on, we may end up losing the genetic diversity of the species. Now, as far as the species abundance and the drivers in terms of soil nutrients, we were able to establish that this species is usually associated to high levels of calcium, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, and also, of course, organic matter. And based on this, we see that, of course, there has been harvesting. The species has been harvested. And very interesting is that the harvesters of this species are not the Karamajungs, but the harvesters of the species, for instance, in Amdat, which is neighboring to the other side of Kenya, we established that many people, traders from Kenya, would come and harvest this. And the mode of harvesting was also very interesting, that some individuals that are female are harvested with their roots. They are not cut. So that is very destructive, and it should raise a lot of concern. There are some few mature trees and no seedlings, and the population is depending on coppicing, and of course this raises a lot of concerns on the stability of this population in this area. What are the priorities from the findings? We established that the species is able to grow in specific areas. And I'm happy that Nafori has taken initiatives to restore some of these areas. And so we will be able to have, we need to emphasize the rehabilitation and restoration of these degraded ecosystems. Let's emphasize sustainable harvesting regulations. We propose that a presidential decree to curb the unsustainable use and even trade in these species can be very important. In Kenya, it worked. The president made a decree that no trade, no cutting down, and no unsustainable use of sandalwood in Kenya. And then the population is trying to come up. So we can do the same also in Uganda. If we have that kind of measure, then we'll be able to have these species and we benefit from it with time. We also need to establish access to conservation measures, engage the communities, monitor what is happening, and also protect priority populations in specific areas, especially in Moroto and also in Amadat. And the message is that all citizen populations are fragmented and they have low sexual regeneration. We need to investigate more on what is causing this. Is it the unsustainable uprooting of the female ones because the species is dioecious? And also we need urgent science-based conservation before the whole population could decline. We encourage more efforts to investigate this. We are grateful to our sponsors and also collaborators in this kind of study. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Presenter. He avoided mentioning the scientific name of the species he has presented on until the end. And I want to imagine that it's a very rare species. And how many of you heard that the females look different from the males? Did you hear that? And it's a very important tree species that produces a very rare quality of oil, and it's being harvested by foreigners. You heard that? Very rare, and the threat level is being worsened by people who come all the way from Kenya. Kenya and what else? Only Kenya. So the Kenyans know the value. I think the part of the oils and vaselines they are producing, maybe it's medicinal, so maybe we are even buying their products, and yet they are harvesting from Uganda. So that is the essence of science in such research symposium. So I want to call upon all the presenters to come forward and take their questions. And we have only 10 minutes for the question session. And I am going to be very tough on people who, first of all, ask so many questions to one presenter. And the first lecture the presenters before they ask the question. That should be avoided, isn't it? The lectures were done by the presenters. So don't lecture the presenters. Just ask your question, and then they lecture you back, isn't it? Yeah. So the person who was passing the... I need someone to pass this thing. Okay. Let me see all the hands of the people who want to ask questions so that I give each of them a minute and for 10 questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, exactly 10. So you should ask a question in half a minute, and preserve your half minute for the answer. And I want the presenters to note that if anyone asks you a question and he takes 1 minute, don't answer that question. Okay? The old woman will bite. So, you go round until the end, and then they will answer the questions. 1 question, half a minute.
I'm asking a question on the very valuable plant. It seems the plant is having a lot of value. Is it possible for this plant for mapping to be done where else it can be grown in Uganda? And then I see a lot of value in it for the Karamoja region, given the challenges.
Very precise. Thank you. I think you have saved even some time.
This goes to Emily. You indicated that there are declining snares over the years around Mburo, Kibale, and you mentioned that it's because the anti-poaching patrols have reduced them. Do you have data for that? Have you seen that the anti-poaching has gone? Then Isaac, you mentioned the motivation for illegal activities was poverty and income. In the previous session, somebody talked about income and food, and your results didn't have anything to do with the food. Do you have a comment on that? Last, on the sandalwood, you mentioned 50% of the population are adult, meaning they are grown. And yet, when you look at the sizes, they are the small ones which were in the majority. Can you explain that? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Hindra, for the presentation. Mine goes to you on how you actually measured the human-wildlife conflict. Is there any value that you used to, measure the human-wildlife conflict? Because we would like to know that the findings that you get here could actually be reliable and used in any other parts within Africa. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This one goes to Indra from Katwe School. In your recommendation, you are talking of increase and decentralized revenue share. I want you to explain a little bit more. And then number 2, I just want to request on the issue of electric fence, because everywhere where electric fence work has been done, everybody is saying thank you, people are sleeping, people are very happy. You have chosen Bosonga area, I think I was there like 3 weeks ago. You find maize right at the edge of the park and everybody's happy. So I'm just requesting probably maybe in 2-3 years time, do the research again so that we see how things are changing. But compare with the fishing villages. Thank you.
Thank you. Mine is to Dr. Emily. I like the approach, Career Day. I'm concerned that since it's a one-day event, what is the impact on the learner's attitude and conservation? And in that line, I would propose that since you're also doing field trips, you could integrate the activities aligned to careers in other activities. So a one-day event, I'm not sure, your figures look nice, but I'm not sure about the impact. Then to Isaac, you mentioned non-state actors, but it looks like it was only BMCT in your presentation. Did your findings, were they based on the others or it's only BMCT? Thank you very much.
Thank you, presenters. My name is Philemon Tumwebaze. I also have questions, I think, for almost all of you. One goes to Dr. Emire. In your presentation, you told us that 30% of the chimps are snared. I'm wondering, after 29 years of your program of wire snare removal, this is still happening. Then again, another question to you is, in your opening slides, I saw children still barefooted going to school. Is it still the situation with the efforts that you are making to improve their education and their health? To Isaac, I saw you say that the biggest percentage of people are not going to Bwindi or not going illegally in Bwindi because they will be stopped by rangers. And there is a number of non-state actors around Bwindi doing a great job. Why is it that their benefits are not being felt, but instead they are feeding rangers? To my friend Hindra, like Chief said, you compared communities that shouldn't have been compared, because you compared Nyakatonzi, which is outside the park, and where our interventions are very effective because we have put electric fence, with Hamukungu, which is an enclave. So the conflict definitely will be different. I also think that, yes, I just wanted to provide that information that the conflict that people are experiencing in the inside are different from outside. Let me not lecture. Thank you.
For sure, don't lecture. Ask your question direct. You have 1 minute. You use half of it for asking, half of it will be used for answering your question.
I'm Emily Otekat, and my first question goes to Emily Otali. You did very well to talk about Wildlife Clubs of Uganda and what you're doing, and I'm glad the ED of WCU is here. Is there a way we can, as a community conservationists, get the curriculum on nature conservation into the issues of nature conservation into the education curriculum? Can we start lobbying for that? To the second person, second person was to Bruce in Obiona. That was about Kibale. You were talking about dealing with 15 schools. Are you dealing in these schools in collaboration with WCU, or you're handling them separately? Because there's a danger in that. If you're handling them separately, then they become a very big problem. Lastly, I think it is to somebody who talked about human-wildlife conflicts. I think it's Hindra. Is that the right? Hindra, when you went out, you found a number of setbacks, and one of them was an ineffective compensation scheme. I was interested in hearing from you what you gathered from the community, what makes it ineffective, and how can we speed it up? How can UWA, actually I'm not part of UWA, but I am a chairman, Honorary Wildlife Officers, but my interest, having worked in UWA for 51 years now, my interest is to know how can the compensation be improved as a scheme. Thank you.
Okay, I think, haven't we finished? Those of you, you need to be Christians. Even Muslims should know better that you need to be trusted, okay? If you did not put up your hand before, if you were not counted about amongst the 10 people, please put down your hand. The one who is passing the microphone, how many have you picked? How many hands have you picked so far? You don't know. So now we are going to suffer with you. 7. So where are the 3 remaining hands? Okay.
Yes, thank you, moderator. I'll go straight to my question, and my question goes to Dr. Emily about the community outreach or handling of the children. And basically, I'm looking at the child parent influenced conservation. Have you gone ahead to determine the influence of the children to the parents as far as conservation is concerned, because we would like to determine and how the children are influencing the parents to promote conservation. The future of conservation now lies in the hands of the younger generation, and we would love to see how they are influencing the parents to promote conservation. Then the last question is about the Osiris Lasolata. With the person who handled this was talking about the female and the male, and there is harvesting of the roots. Are they harvesting on both the females and the males, or there is a specific species, the male or the female? And what did you go ahead to find out the purpose of harvesting these roots? What are the communities using these roots? And what is the future of this plant in Karamoja? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm called Aoja Aaron. My question goes to Uganda Wildlife Authority. In the process of compensation when communities around the buffer zones of the game reserves, for example, Maction Falls National Park, when elephants broke out and destroyed people's communities, the compensation takes long, and sometimes communities don't get justice for the destruction that has been caused by these animals. Thank you.
The last question. No.
My name is Muindo Joylin.
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm.
And I'm from Kasese. So at one point, my family happened to be victims of crop raiding that was basically by elephants. And it's true that the compensation, it was not sufficient. So my question would be going to Madam Hintra. I would like to know, how can conservation policies balance the protection of wildlife and the livelihood of the people who have been affected by these crop raids? Thank you.
The last one.
Thank you so much, Chair. My questions goes to Emery and Blues. I wanted to know that statistical trend of chimps, then if they are increasing or decreasing in Kibale National Park. And the last question is, can chimps adapt to rapidly changing environments caused by human activities? Why? And if not, why not? Thank you.
And make sure you ask a question about a subject matter that was presented. If you are making a notice to Uganda Wildlife Authority, mention so, okay? So that the presenters are able to answer the question in respect to what they presented. So at this juncture, I call upon the presenters to respond. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all your questions. I'll start with the easy one. Statistical trends of chimp populations. I think, yes, there is evidence that chimpanzee populations are growing slowly in Kibale. Afande Dorothy, I don't know if she's here. Am I right? And yes, chimps are very resilient animals. They can adapt to many changes. They have a very wide range of, feeding. You know, if there are no fruits, they'll have plan B. So they easily adapt to changes in the environment. On the question of evidence of anti-poaching patrols, yes, we do snare removal and other observation illegal activities together with Uganda Wildlife Authority, and the numbers of snares being collected decrease very lower compared to like 10 years ago. Also, we used to have a lot of incidences of chimps or other wildlife being caught in snares, and now that has reduced. We have what we call inter-snare interval. So the inter-snare interval, which is the number of months between one snare, one animal being caught in a snare, have increased. Why are there snares still being collected in the forest or in the park? It's because the poachers are still there. One, we once caught a poacher who told us to catch one animal, they might set like 200 snares. And now it's a kind of a cat and mouse game that they know where we are patrolling and they'll set in the opposite part of the park. And this is why going to the children and changing their livelihoods, making sure they do not go back to depend on the forest is very important to us. Someone asked about barefoot children. I wore my first pair of shoes when I went to S1. It has nothing to do with conservation. Unfortunately, we do not work on improving livelihoods, but it doesn't matter how these children come to school. The most important thing is we make sure they go past primary education all the way to tertiary education. Our career day model is not just based on bringing the conservationists to the children. Our conservation education team does daily education about these things. So bringing or inviting a conservationist is just the, what do they call, the ice on the cake, or so the icing on the cake. So that is, we have a team that is constantly doing the conservation education. Absolutely, Emily. I would love for conservation education to be adopted in the Ugandan education curriculum. It's very, very frustrating. I have been a parent myself, and I know that Ministry of Education will randomly throw conservation questions in what they are teaching the children, especially social studies, but sometimes they are so wrong. At one point when my daughter was in primary 7, I was the consultant for her SST teacher on national parks and what they do, you know. So yes, it's time that the Conservation Society or family in Uganda should really push for conservation education to be in the education curriculum in the country. And the final question was on the child-parent influence. Yes, we also do this. One of the things we work with the schools to do showcasing event of everything the children have learned in the year. At the end of the year, we invite parents to come and the children demonstrate for them. We also go and visit parents of every child, especially the ones that are in the wildlife clubs, to ask them questions. You know, have you learned? What have you learned from your child? You know, they're a member of the wildlife club. Have you planted any tree? Do you have an energy-saving cook stove? So we do all this in what we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your questions. I will be quick. The first question was, which variables did we use to measure human-wildlife conflict? We had so many. One of them was crop loss, livestock loss, property damage, human injury, death, fear or stress, and also income loss. And very many other variables of, like I said during my presentation, the distance from the park, how often does conflict happen in your household, things like that. The second question was from Chief, Dr. Enyel. You requested that I talk more about decentralizing revenue sharing. The locals, I'm simply reporting what the locals said. They feel the whole process. Of course, some of them are more informed. They know that when they report these conflicts, they have to apply and then collect evidence, and then it is sent to Kampala, then it is vetted if it is true, If you're claiming that the elephant damaged 2 acres of tomatoes, then someone comes on ground to see, is it true? And sometimes, finally, someone feels if they lost a cow and they had valued it at 2 million, you've given them 500 and again took the dead cow, they felt like it was unfair. And in my conclusions, I mentioned about miscommunication between UA and communities. There are some players in management of human-wildlife conflict, I will not say names, where you find they act on behalf of other organizations, but the locals take it that they act on behalf of UA. So when they lose a cow, someone offers you 700 and they again take the dead cow. Sometimes they take it that this person is representing UA as an organization. And some of them, meanwhile, they also don't know proper channels of applying for compensation. That was also something that I observed. Dr. Aniel mentioned about electric fences. For example, at the time of this study when we went to Nyakatonzi, this new fence around Nyamugasani had not yet been done. There was only this stretch that is in a bit of Nyakatonzi. So we know animals are funny. They also go around the fence. But now we know, like, for example, that stretch is well sorted. But like Doctor said, we shall take on that advice. We shall do another study in 2 to 3 years and we see if there is a change in regards to electric fences. And also take on the advice you mentioned about fishing villages. Someone mentioned about comparing Nyamugasani and Hamkungu. I didn't compare them, I just quoted them as examples. But when we were picking sites for the study, we made sure that we had true representation. It is not ideal for you to only study pastoralist communities. And if you can tell from my conclusions, I said that human-wildlife conflict, particularly in Queen Elizabeth, is dimensional. It is not the same as Lake Mburo. It is not the same as Machon, which doesn't have community enclaves within the park. Like he mentioned, Hamukungu is I'm forgetting the name, is a sanctuary, but yet again people, man and biosphere, again people stay there. And then we have fishing villages. The way how one would handle human-wildlife conflict in Queen is not the same they would handle it in Machon, which is fully a protected area. And then there was another question about the compensation. How ineffective. I've already mentioned it. Sometimes someone feels that their Frisian cow was worth 2 million and you gave them 1 million. They were giving me figures, but I tried to avoid collecting data that was not answering my objectives, though I have that data. And maybe later on we can see how we can make sense of it. And I think at the end of the day, if someone applies for compensation or they report that they have had a loss that has been caused by human-wildlife conflict, it is important that they are kept in the loop. If their application is still in maybe say Katunguru, sometimes for them they think it will happen in 3 days. We have cases where a home loses a head of the home. For example, the man, the head of the home, and maybe UA will come in, they sort the funeral expenses, they do the grave and the coffin, but then you can never replace the father of the home. And also sometimes it is unrealistic to think that UA will compensate you 100 million for your dead husband. So it's like a continuous thing. We can't get tired. You have to constantly remind, constantly sensitize, constantly feel empathy for the lost property or lost lives. But at the end of the day, this is a journey that is not about to end. And I hope one day we shall be able to achieve coexistence. Thank you all.
Hello, I have 3 questions and I think they are all direct. One was why food was not talked about. And another person, presenter, talked as the main cause for illegal activities. Yes, food was included in the study, during coding, all basic necessities. Food, lack of school fees, lack of medical care, money to buy meat was all referred to poverty and stock income. Then another question was about, all the presentation was about BMCT. not other actors. Yes, this was a case study, as if you have been following right away from my topic, it was the case study, and it was the funder for the study. And however, we moved on to highlight other stakeholders. There was a slide showing all the stakeholders working around BMCA. And still on the attitudes toward the park, I remember mentioning that the non-BMCT beneficiaries have the positive attitude toward the park based on the other benefits they are getting from the other non-state actors other than BMCT.
Okay.
Then lastly,
so you need to wind up because we are now in lunch.
Okay.
And the other team members are already eating, and we are not.
And I think the third question, I have already answered it in the second question.
So
thanks.
Can you summarize?
Yes, I'll summarize so that we go and catch up with lunch. My question is one, WCU is there. How are we working with it? Yes, I want to bring it to attention that among the key acknowledgements, it was WCU. Professor Tadeu is in the house, the contact person in the district for WCU activities. So we have a strong working relationship with them. But that notwithstanding, we have noticed that different conservation organizations start clubs in schools. And you'll find organization A having green clubs, you have organization B having environmental clubs. And so it's an engagement we're having with Professor Tadeo and the team to see how we can harmonize to avoid duplication and support each other. I thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I will also summarize for the interest of time. The question from Joel, yes, it is possible to propagate this species, and there is a lot of potential for people in Karamoja and other areas to benefit from this. The future of cities lanceolata lies in innovation. In Kenya, it has already started. We can have Karamoja tea because sandalwood is partly used as a beverage by the local people. So there are so many innovations that we can have as they wait for these species to grow after 20 years or 15 years. Why do we only have one source of tea in Masindi or other areas? And yet these people can be helped to have the leaves packed, made into tea. We talk to UWA in all these hotels, in UWA areas, protected areas. We serve this as one of the innovations for encouraging people to conserve this species. Thank you.
Okay, Chief Warden, Kidepo Valley Conservation Area, you have a challenge to fulfill, and it is a recommendation that has been put forward to you, and I believe Uganda Wildlife Authority is going to take this very serious. There's a species under threat, and there's a recommendation to harvest it more and more, and so you need to up your game and grow it, right? And I noticed that nobody is interested in going for lunch. This is just the sign that people were so interested in this session. I thank you so much for giving all your attention to this session and all the presenters. And can we have the picture man just quickly? And those of you who haven't got your meal cards, please get quickly. Okay. So should I hand over to you as the picture person takes pictures, please?
I think in interest of time, it works better that way. It's better that way. As we take the pictures, I can pass around the announcements. The first one is that after lunch, we shall assemble in Kampala Hall, down here, for the poster presentation. And the research team of UWA is called upon to make those arrangements during lunch break, so that after lunch, we do that. After the poster presentation, we shall all come back here for the keynote address, and after that, we shall have closing remarks, and we shall be seeing this symposium off for now. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
Good Day TV, transforming your life.